RTS games in 2023. Will they be good? Maybe. You let me know. But anyway, a lot of people are looking for specifically RTSs in the upcoming year, and I wanted to compile all of the ones that I think are worth keeping an eye on. So let's get right into it. There's this really cool looking RTS called Dust Front, and it's an indie developer, so it's going really slow and there's no confirmed release or anything like that, but just the gameplay shown off so far has a great kind of Warhammer 40k, StarCrafty, dark, grim kind of vibe, and it just looks really cool. It's got, well, from the looks of things, it looks like it's got all of the core elements of an RTS, and if it does all come together, it does look very promising. However, I am skeptical that this is ever going to release. I just really hope it does. Then there's DORF RTS, which is a real-time strategic conflict, taking inspiration from classic RTS games of the 90s while also expanding the genre with new and innovative mechanics. That is the promise of DORF RTS. And it's another indie RTS development which looks very cool. Another kind of gritty, grim, dark approach, which seems to be pretty popular nowadays. Maybe it's harkening back to the old 90s aesthetic, which is kind of grim, dark, grimy, gritty. You know, maybe that's the new trend. I mean, part nostalgia, part realism. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's just cool. But anyway, DORF RTS is also a really cool concept that seems really promising, but again, it's another very indie development, which has a very unclear release, so it may show up someday, it may not, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on. And then we have Falling Frontier by Stutter Fox Studios. And this is one that I've been watching for a long time, years and years, and it was initially supposed to enter early access in 2021, but then they delayed it to 2022, and then in 2022 it was delayed until late 2022, and then towards the end of 2022 they delayed it to 2023. So it's a very hard one to list, and they keep pushing it back. But this is supposed to be about procedurally generated star systems, and it's a sci-fi RTS where intel and logistics are decisive factors. You'll be able to design ships and raid enemy supply lines, lay minefields and construct recon stations, and conduct ambushes from within asteroid fields and nebulae. So it sounds really cool. It's just I've been talking about this one for quite some time, and they keep pushing it back. Hopefully 2023 is the final release window. For another one I've been watching for a few years now is Immortal Gates of Pyre by Sunspear Games. And this initially seemed like a really cool idea. It's aiming to be a free-to-play battle strategy game where you act as godlike generals, leading massive armies to destroy each other's bases. Each Immortal represents a proud and powerful nation vying for dominance, not just through their soldiers, but through their divinely powered spells and abilities. But this is one that I've been keeping an eye on for a few years now, and it has been slowly progressing through the years. And there's no particular release window right now, so I don't know how this is currently progressing. It might be going okay, and it did have a successful Kickstarter, so they should have the funds to make this a reality. It's just, we've been waiting for quite some time, and it would be nice to know when we'll be able to play this. There was supposedly a Kickstarter alpha through 2022, so hopefully we can see something a bit more public in 2023. Okay, now we're a little bit into the video. I'm sure you're enjoying it so far. I've spent a lot of time on this, so if you do appreciate what you see here, please do press the like button. It's free and it helps a lot. I'd also love to know which game on the list is your favorite, so comment down below. It does actually help me look for more games that you will want to see. Alright, next game. Making the next move. It's Barkhan by Glyph Worlds. Perhaps an RTS inspired by Dune, because this takes place on a harsh sand planet where a brutal war happens between three factions, all vying for control of rare minerals. Oh, there are also sand snakes. So yeah, it's basically a Dune RTS that isn't officially Dune. Each faction has its own unique units and technologies, which can be difficult to balance, but I do personally think asymmetrical competition is really important to keep strategy games interesting and dynamic, as long as nothing is too overpowered. Overall, if you've played Dune 2000, this looks like a 3D version, so you can expect the staples of classic RTS being base building, resource management, and real-time army control. But will it end up feeling like a Dune knockoff, or will it actually be able to stand on its own? There's been a free demo in 2022, and the release date is currently set for the 9th of February, 2023. So Barkhan's completion seems to be just over the next sand dune. Now, a game actually set on Arrakis, Dune Spice Wars by Shiro Games. A new strategy game set in the Dune universe sounds exciting, not to mention the other Dune games in the works, but this one isn't fully ready quite yet. At the start of early access, this game had its share of bugs and messiness, but overall gameplay had a solid foundation, and generally it feels like a good game. My main contention is that the Dune games have typically been super thick with their atmosphere. Dune as a franchise has. Watching back the original film, playing Dune 1, and remembering the live-action cinematics from Dune 2000 and Emperor Battle for Dune, the level of character, style, and atmosphere felt almost as intense as the sands of Arrakis. Here in Dune Spice Wars, it feels a bit clinical, lacking in personality, which doesn't make a huge difference in the gameplay, but it did make it harder to keep me compelled. I'm unsure if they'll be able to add in the signature Dune aesthetic as development continues, but if that's not a deal breaker for you, then Dune Spice Wars is looking like a good game at least. Now for another game that's being completely legally distinct, Tempest Rising by Slipgate Ironworks. Command and Conquer, but not from EA? An enticing prospect for many. Ever since the CNC remasters, which are very good, but missing so many of the older games, I've been wanting a new game in the series, and I suspect I'm not the only one. Usually when a big series misses out on an opportunity, someone else steps up with something similar, but this really looks like a modern Command and Conquer, even to the point of having buildings shaped like hands. Classic RTS with base building, 3 asymmetrical factions with unique economies and units, 2 campaigns with cutscenes, along with the good old game modes of skirmish, custom games, and ranked multiplayer with ELO matchmaking. Look, I mean, at a glance, this just seems awesome, and it's a real chance that someone else will finally make a spiritual successor to Command and Conquer that might be able to match or hopefully surpass the older games. But maybe that's overly optimistic. Tempest Rising has all our hopes up. All we can do is hope it delivers. And then for another totally legally distinct not Command and Conquer, Dying Breed by Sarnea. This is clearly a Command and Conquer 95 almost clone, but it's got some zombie thing going on, which is kind of interesting. Retro-futuristic RTS where a new substance has been discovered and is being put to military use. In 90s fashion, sneak behind enemy lines, navigate puzzling levels, construct bases, manage your resources and army, and defeat your enemies. 2 campaigns for 2 factions vying for control, the Westworld Alliance and the Empire Ascending Order. It's a familiar setup with a fresh take, which could be what a lot of people are wanting. As with the last game, it seems since EA isn't going to make a new Command and Conquer, then others are going to try to themselves. And if you're a fan of the original CNC, then this has some prospects. As long as this isn't directly ripping anything, it won't get in trouble, and there's a free demo to try if you want to check out Dying Breed. For a god game RTS, it's Fata Deum by 42 Bits Entertainment. This is inspired by the god games of old. Fata Deum lets you mold settlements and townsfolk in your image. Will you raise the settlement to splendor or spur them on to violent debauchery and demons? This does seem very much inspired by the old Black and White, and I do love the idea of taking your people and leading them either evil or good, and seeing that reflected in the game world. And this has a lot of the old RTS elements as well, so you'll be fighting other gods and factions and stuff like that. It's just this was supposed to release in 2022, and there was a demo in 2022, but it felt rather lackluster, it seemed rather bare bones, and it had a lot of performance issues on my end at least. So it didn't quite feel ready, and they delayed it from 2022 into 2023, so we will see how Fata Deum continues moving forward. Next we have Global Conflagration by Midwood. Set in the near future, Global Conflagration is an RTS game that will take the player on a massive European conquest. Build your base, train units, deploy measures, and call in airstrikes to destroy your opponents. This sounds very much like a near future RTS, and it looks a little rough at first glance, but it's still in production and is planning to go into early access. So this might be another Command & Conquer alternative that you might be looking for, but we'll see how this turns out once it enters early access and we see what we get. In a similar vein, Commanding Nations by 7 Volts Games. This game makes the big, bold promise of bringing back the fun gameplay of RTS. Building anywhere, producing as many units as you like, and you can collect all the needed resources from the map. It is supposed to be an RTS of old, with 3 unique nations in PvP combat. Sounds pretty good. However, it went into early access towards the end of 2022 to few but mixed reviews. It is still leaning on the positive side at the moment on Steam, so it's not necessarily a bad game by any means, but it's not quite convincing as many people as it needs to right now. But that feedback could be used to implement improvements and enhancements to the game. So as this develops through 2023, it might turn into something nice and special, but we will have to see. For one that may or may not ever release is Terminator Dark Fate Defiance by Slytherin. This is supposed to be a Terminator RTS, promising a gritty world set in the middle of the future wars, which I know is not everyone's favorite Terminator setting, but that's what it is. You're supposed to take command and lead your army to foil Legion's plan to destroy humanity, or play as one of the 3 factions in skirmish and multiplayer. Now there's 2 things I note about this game. One, it looks very gray. Like, I don't know what it is about the art style, but the whole game just looks like flat gray, which is not exactly appealing, and practically it's hard to tell what's what. It's just a gray world. But besides that, the original developers had to pull out of the project, so at the moment there's no current active developer as far as we know. It's shifted back to the publisher, which is Slytherin, but losing the developer could mean that this doesn't really turn out as good as it's supposed to be. But hey, maybe it turns out even better. Slytherin as a whole generally figure things out and deliver good products, so we'll see whether they can pull it together themselves or if they can find a replacement dev. But the future of Terminator Dark Fate Defiance is up in the air. It's Red Chaos by Square Cut Games. An indie modern RTS that also seems to be inspired by Command & Conquer. That means gathering resources, building bases, and producing units are the core of the game. Campaign mode is available, and multiplayer with up to 8 players offers the staple RTS options here. And there's the promise of sophisticated balancing, utilizing strengths and weaknesses of individual units. There is a story of a fractured empire and failed peace attempts, but I have to say the writing published so far is a bit messy. Early footage also looks kind of laggy and rough, and with so many other games on the list that are trying to take a piece of the CNC pie, it's going to be an uphill battle for this to control this ground. Planning to release mid-2023, we'll see if Red Chaos can fix itself up in time and carve out some territory for itself. A classic RTS, but very different. It's Warpaws by Slipgate Ironworks and 2B Games. First glance of gameplay here, and you might think that this is just one more contemporary RTS. Building bases, collecting resources, training units, and overwhelming your enemy, right? Well, this is actually about cats and dogs. Not in a metaphorical way, but literally. It's cats versus dogs. Inspired by the RTS game Z, a less-known 90s endeavor, deploy spies, send in bazooka-wielding soldiers, and assemble an army of gunners, engineers, and pyros, which are actually cats or dogs. Gameplay does seem like a proper RTS, so my concern is the whole pet animal thing will just be a distraction and a surface-level attempt to be unique. But then again, games have been feeling a bit clinical quite often these past few years, so maybe some silly fun choices is what we need. Something silly and fun could be refreshing, as long as the gameplay is also good. The animal RTS that is Warpaws is currently set to release sometime in 2023, which is when we'll find out if this whole thing is a silly gimmick or if it turns out to be something actually meaningful. Flipping the script, we've got War Hospital by Brave Lamb Studio. A World War I RTS, but from a different perspective. You are the ray of hope in this war and are in control of the medical corps instead of soldiers. Build infrastructure and improve your hospital as you help maintain the strength of the front lines. Healing people isn't going to be so straightforward, even considering the dangers of the war zone. Injuries can be from bullets, shells, chemical warfare, and mental trauma. And choices with little time and resources will force you to make difficult decisions. Not a traditional RTS, clearly, but I think it's a unique take, and it kind of feels and looks like Company of Heroes. But your objectives are related to saving lives using innovative World War I medical technology on a realistic French front. Release is currently scheduled for Q1 in 2023, so not much longer until you can start saving lives in War Hospital. Staying on the front, we've got The Great War Western Front by Petroglyph Games. Play a deciding role in history on the iconic Western Front between the years 1914 to 1919. A dual-commander grand strategy RTS set during World War I from the developers of Command & Conquer. It looks good and will have a campaign, historical scenarios, skirmish, and multiplayer game modes. Play as either the Allied nations or Central Powers, each with their unique abilities and gameplay styles. You control the big picture as a grand strategy, which is turn-based with resource management and technology research. But then you zoom in to control the battlefield in real time, where you build trenches and direct assaults. This sort of dual-style gameplay has some merit, and it could be the thing that sets this apart. Petroglyph Games has had its ups and downs, but we'll see if they can bring the RTS and grand strategy together while also keeping them separate. The Great War Western Front is aiming to release in 2023, so if you want to take charge, it shouldn't be much of a wait. Now, for a few games that are clearly inspired by They Are Billions, starting with Alien Marauder by Vexen Studio. A real-time strategy with survival and confrontation themes. This is kind of like a sci-fi They Are Billions, where you be a leader on a treacherous alien planet, build up your base and defenses, amass a large army, and hold off massive swarms of alien creatures hell-bent on destroying everything you've made. We do have a few games that are like this on this list, so the main challenge for these games is that They Are Billions is already a really good and popular game, and it's gonna take more than a theme and premise change to get people on board. It'll be interesting to see if Alien Marauder can do it. This went into early access towards the end of 2021 and has few reviews, but a mostly positive rating on Steam so far. Updates and additions through early access have been regular, if maybe a little slow, but Alien Marauder does seem to be getting new features over time, and it looks like it's coming together. No specific release window for completion though, it's just a loose roadmap. In a similar vein, but a bit more historical, Diplomacy is Not an Option by Door 407. Born as a feudal lord, and you are the nicest guy and everyone hates you for no reason. Hordes of enemies are ready to storm your castle, so prepare your defenses and hold off the masses trying to dethrone you. Definitely playing like a medieval They Are Billions. From what I've experienced, this feels a little looser and not quite as refined, but it does add a lot of twists to the gameplay. The spells and pretty much god powers do make quite a spectacle, and it makes wiping out the invading rabble pretty satisfying. It's also not set in a bleak post-apocalyptic zombie world, which does lighten the mood, which is something I do think many did struggle with how heavy They Are Billions is, gameplay and setting-wise. In early access since early 2022 with very positive reviews on Steam, Diplomacy is Not an Option is set for a 2023 full release. For one more wave survival RTS, Age of Darkness Final Stand by Playside. A dark, medieval, and magical game where you must illuminate, build, and defend humanity's last stand and survive against a horde of nightmares. Set in the remnants of an old kingdom consumed by a kind of living but deadly fog. You expand during the day and hunt the demons at night. Taking some inspiration from the roguelite genre, there are random malices and blessings that will change the experience in each run you do. Impressively, they also boast swarm tech that allows up to 70,000 units to exist on screen at any one time. That is something that these games are trying to push compared to They Are Billions, just more units and more of everything, and so far they've been having some success. This has been in early access since the end of 2021 and has received thousands of reviews on Steam with a very positive rating, but development is going a little slower than expected. Meant to be in early access for about 1 year, the roadmap still shows a lot of features are in development, including more content, a story campaign, and multiplayer. It's doing well and future plans sound great, so I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Age of Darkness Final Stand as it continues to develop through 2023. For another game I've been watching for many years, it's Moduwar by Biohex Games. This one is a cool idea. Moduwar is a modular RTS where your base is your units and you build organic structures and split or combine them as you so desire. Your buildings are your units, and your units are your building and your base. It's Moduwar. But we have been watching this for a long time. And yeah, it is an indie development, so it's to be expected. But right now, it is aiming for a Q1 2023 early access release, so we might be able to finally get into this game soon, because I played the demo like a couple years ago now. And it was cool, but, you know, it was very much unfinished. So all the best to Moduwar, we'll see how it pulls itself together. For something on a grander scale, there's Sanctuary Shattered Sun by Enharten Media. Calling itself a traditional real-time strategy game, featuring strategic zooms, streaming economies, simulated projectiles, and a grand scale. Take control of armies of hundreds upon hundreds of units and crush your enemies. This is a game that I've been keeping an eye on for a while now, and it was looking rather rough, but recently it's really come together, and it's starting to look pretty interesting. And from footage we've seen, it's running pretty nicely as well, and when you have the grand scale like this with armies of such size, performance and optimization is one of the biggest concerns. So it's currently unclear when this will release, and there's a Kickstarter project that is yet to run, so it's probably not going to release fully anytime soon, but if the Kickstarter is a success, we might see something playable over the next year. Staying on the grand scale of RTS, it's BAR, Beyond All Reason. This is a project that has been going for years, and people really do like it. It says it's real-time strategy redefined, which is a bold claim, but every unit, projectile, and explosion is simulated in real time, and the scale and realism of the battles in this game is impressive, right? And it does take into account the terrain and all of that as well. I mean, it looks good, it's simulating a ton of stuff, and it's in alpha right now, so, you know, people are playing it and enjoying themselves, so it's a pretty real thing, which is kind of important, because quite often these games just don't manifest themselves. So it's nice to see something on this scale that's been going for a while and is actually playable. Though any kind of full release for something like this, well, that's not going to be anytime soon as far as I'm guessing. But it's an interesting project, and if you like the look of it, go check it out. We had a touch of pixel art earlier, now for a few games that also bring the pixels. Starting with TFC The Fertile Crescent by Wheeled Interactive. An RTS inspired by the classics of old, where you build and survive in the cradle of civilization. This does give off the vibe of being an Age of Empires pixel art demake with survival elements, and the gameplay is kind of like how some of us role-played playing Age of Empires as a survival colony builder back in the day. Or was that just me? Anyone else? No? Well, you know I love pixel art, so I'm into the way this looks, but it is very much a retro visual style, which I know many people struggle to get into. Overall though, the Fertile Crescent plays well, has competitive multiplayer, and does feel like a proper RTS. It's been getting updates and more is on the way, including new civilizations, naval combat, a campaign mode, and multiplayer matchmaking. With few but very positive reviews on Steam right now in early access, it's aiming for a full 2023 release. Staying old school, it's Retro Commander by Noble Master. A post-apocalyptic real-time strategy war game that seems to be inspired by Command & Conquer. Yes, another one. It's an influential series. Single and multiplayer modes, a good variety of units, and faction-specific technologies across 5 different factions. Gameplay seems good, but at the moment lacking refinement. Pixel art as a style has been more in vogue, as you can see, recently. And this is a decent look, though we have seen a variety of pixel styles even just here on this list, and I'm not sure if this one is gonna be most people's favorite. It's an early access and free to play though, but with all maps and modding sold separately. And right now it's got few but mostly positive reviews on Steam. Planning to be in early access for up to a year, with the promise of better AI and more campaign missions, Retro Commander should be gearing up for a full release sometime in 2023. The Settlers by Ubisoft Dusseldorf. A series that's been decades in the making, and everyone has their favorite Settlers game. Some prefer the old school style, while others prefer the more modern iterations. But this newest one seems to be straying even further from the original formula. The Settlers has been in development for some years now, and those who have been involved in the testings have not necessarily painted a pretty picture. By the sounds of things, the game is just unlike any previous entry to the series, and that it's almost more RTS than town building and resource logistical management, though I think it's still straddling the line between the two. But the straying from the formula, that's probably why the numerous and indefinite delays, because it seems like the game kind of doesn't really know what it wants to be. And it now puts the game in a weird spot because of the delays. The Settlers History Collection released a long time ago now, which would have been a perfect build-up to a new game. But now it's going to be a new game in the middle of nothing in particular, and it might not be like any previous game, So, unless it's amazing in its own right, then the newest settlers might sort of come and go almost unnoticed, because who is this for? Either way, in 2022, they announced another delay, with no specific release window. So the Settlers is still on the way for now, but when it will release and what it'll be is up in the air. Now the one that people always ask about, Manor Lords by Slavic Magic. This is a game that has made a massive splash and has become a sensation in the strategy and city building scenes. People always ask for this in the city building list, but it really does straddle the line between the genres. It has large-scale sieges and tactical battles while combining it with deep, organic and realistic city building with resource management. It visually looks amazing, and both building and military gameplay all seem to be coming together at a level of detail that is rare in gaming. This game is going all out, so much so that it's even mentioned motion capture, photogrammetry, and chaos physics to execute this level of visual detail and simulation. The main thing that I have to say is that Manor Lords better be good, because what's been shown off has hyped a ton of people, and if a game made like this is a success, it's going to send a signal to publishers as well. No release window announced yet, so unfortunately, we all have to just wait for this one and hope it delivers. On a smaller scale, it's Empires of the Undergrowth by Slug Disco Studios. The ant-based strategy game with various types of ant species to choose from in competitive RTS gameplay. There's also a fleshed-out campaign mode, which I think is important in any strategy game, especially in RTS, because the campaign is really what ties the setting and premise together. This is one game that we have watched for a long time. I don't like listing the same game year after year, but in 2022, the latest estimates are that Empires of the Undergrowth will actually be completing and releasing out of early access latest by mid-2023. So either way, this should be the last time we list this game, because I don't want to list it again. It's a good game though, with thousands of reviews and a very positive rating on Steam. Being kind of a successor to Sim Ant, but really being more like Empire of the Ants, an old 3D colony ant sim thing, but this does have more competitive RTS elements. You can jump into the anthill now or wait for the promised release of Empires of the Undergrowth that should be soon. Going a bit fantasy, it's Godsworn by Thunder Oak Interactive. Recently announced, this is a classic mythological RTS with an epic and fantastical retelling of the Northern Crusades, where gods and their tribes clash against crusaders. Choose your divine hero, rally worshippers and mythological creatures, then smite the unworthy. Overall, this looks interesting, though visually a bit unpolished at the moment. Hero abilities, base building, and god powers make it sound like some RTSs of old. There's also a co-op campaign to embark on, and as far as I can tell, co-op RTS gameplay is very popular right now. Having an early access release sometime in 2023, it will be a year plus to completion, where more maps, missions, and heroes, and there's a lot of promise of refinement, particularly on the AI. So we'll see how development goes for Godsworn. Going from gods to the underworld, Agony Lords of Hell by Team Alpha. Build your empire on top of the bones of the Lords of Hell to become the absolute ruler of the underworld. Build your base, amass and arm followers, manage resources, spread your cult, conquer territories and cities, and cast spells. Said to be taking inspiration from Populous, it piques my interest because Populous the Beginning is one of my favorite RTSs of all time. But inspiration doesn't always equal execution. I can totally imagine controlling a demon instead of a shaman, in similar fashion. And that is an intriguing idea. Interestingly, Agony is a horror game that has mixed reviews on Steam, and generally didn't impress all that much. Taking that universe and making an RTS, things might work out better in a different genre, but I'd still be cautious about taking command in Agony Lords of Hell. A new game to a big name, Minecraft Legends by Mojang Studios and Blackbird Interactive. A Minecraft strategy game being developed by the same people making Homeworld. Alright, maybe it could work. Here you are tasked with defending the overworld from the invading destructive piglins, who are here to corrupt your familiar yet mysterious lush world. Control your hero, lead your armies, build defensive structures, and take the fight back to the piglins. This is more of an action strategy game, but there is a lot of interest in it. This is also notably a cross-platform game, including mobile, which could go a couple ways. Strategy games that are also on consoles and mobile can still be deep and complex, but often as a PC game, it can struggle to compare to other PC-exclusive games. Having said that, Minecraft Legends will have more resources and backing than most other games out there. And personally, I've been seeing some PC games come to consoles and be able to maintain all the depth they had on PC, and even control pretty well with a controller. But will Minecraft Legends actually be able to pull it off? We'll just have to wait and see. Moving to space, it's Terra Invicta by Pavonis Interactive. An alien invasion has fractured humanity into factions. Lead one to take control of Earth and expand into the solar system, battling enemy fleets in tactical combat. 7 factions to choose from, along with over 300 asteroids, moons, and planets to fight for, all in constant motion, meaning it's an ever-changing strategic map. You begin as a shadowy organization, playing geopolitics and researching technologies. Then you progress to launching into space to build bases and mine resources. This is kind of like a 4X grand strategy game with 2 distinct phases, and it doesn't seem to play too much like the other 4Xs set in space, so this might be just the right flavor for you. Mod support is also planned, which is always nice. Going into early access on the 26th of September in 2022, with the plan to take half a year or maybe longer to complete. Terra Invicta will show us what it truly is, and you can decide if this is a space you want to conquer. For a sequel that's been a long time coming, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 by Ironclad Games. Battle for dominance as one of 3 races in this real-time strategy set in space on a massive scale. Rule a vast space empire, command and battle fleets, and interact with a fully simulated universe where planets orbit stars and individual missiles are tracked. Notably, multiplayer can be over LAN or internet, which is a nice throwback/change, along with creation and modding tools being provided, so the community could expand the game further. The first game is pretty old, and this is a highly anticipated sequel that's just been announced. Will it live up to the hype? Well, we'll find out soon. Releasing onto the Epic Games Store for the start of early access on the 27th of October in 2022, you can have a proper look at Sins of a Solar Empire 2's gameplay first before jumping in early, or wait a year and see how it develops and if it then releases onto other stores, if that's what you prefer. Now a tumultuous one, Homeworld 3 by Blackbird Interactive. The sci-fi space RTS in 3D environments. This is the latest iteration of the classic strategy game. Now, this has some drama. From the moment Homeworld 3 was announced as a FIG crowdfunded project, but the goal was set to $1 because they already had Gearbox funding the whole thing, it just felt really weird to me. The point of crowdfunding is to get the community truly involved and kept in the loop of development.
Having a publisher usually means you keep a lot of things under wraps to control marketing. How was this going to work? Turns out it doesn't. Communication of the progress of Homeworld 3 broke down, and a lot of people are upset for a lot of different reasons. Unfulfilled promises to backers, lack of proper communication, and after years, we still haven't seen any proper gameplay. And everyone is wondering what's going on. Since the successful FIG campaign in September 2019, there have been a grand total of 25 updates on the FIG page. One recently being about the delay into 2023. I am curious about what Homeworld 3 is going to be after all of this. It might be good, but the biggest fans who supported it from the start might have a little bit of a bad aftertaste.
Then, of course, we've got Company of Heroes 3 by Relic Entertainment. A game that I have, of course, listed before, and it was meant to release in 2022, but it was delayed, so now it's a 2023 game, promising to be bigger and better than ever. This is a game that combines heart-pounding combat with deeper strategic choices in a stunning Mediterranean theater of war. In Company of Heroes 3, every battle tells a story, which this basically sounds amazing. It's been turning out really well. People have liked the look of the game so far, and it's releasing soon in early 2023. So from all perspectives, this seems to be a confident success. Though you never know, something might break on launch or something like that. But it has been such a long time since the last main Company of Heroes game, and it will be cool to see how all the diverse factions and units and the cinematic action, which is signature to the Company of Heroes series, will all turn out in this latest iteration. We've talked about this before, everyone knows about it, so you know it's coming.
Stormgate by Frost Giant Studios. So this is basically the next big RTS from ex-Blizzard devs. It's got massive funding, millions upon millions of dollars. Along with that, it's got a huge public following with endless discussions and community support. If there's ever been an RTS that has almost everything going for it, it's Stormgate. But there is one thing it doesn't have: lineage. It's a completely new IP. No established story or lore, no fan-favorite characters, no nostalgia attached to a decades-old series. That's where I think Stormgate will make or break itself, and it really needs to prove how it can truly compete with the overwhelming shadow being cast by StarCraft. One thing that's been made clear is that it's trying to take the most successful aspects of existing RTS games and accommodate a wide variety of players, even calling itself a social RTS, promising a focus on esports along with having an ever-expanding campaign. I am waiting with bated breath to see what Stormgate delivers, and hoping that it really does become the next big RTS. But I guess we'll have to wait and see more when the beta hits in 2023.
Now for one that's pretty much only been teased, it's Stronghold Unreal, the codename for the next Stronghold game by Firefly Studios. This is the first Stronghold game from Firefly that is taking place in the Unreal 5 engine, and the first Stronghold game since them being picked up by Devolver Digital. So they got a new publisher, they got a new engine, and it's gonna be interesting to see what that does to the Stronghold series. People have not always been happy with the direction the Stronghold series has taken over the last decade. Some people like some directions, some people less like other directions. But this is gonna be a big leap, whatever it is. And I'm very excited to see what Stronghold Unreal brings to the table, and see whether it can top some of its greatest hits. I am wishing for all the best for Stronghold Unreal. And for an RTS that we know even less about, it's Star Wars strategy game by Respawn Entertainment. Now, we don't really know much about this, but Star Wars games have been pretty prolific over the past couple years, new ones on the way, and Respawn Entertainment has been taken on to develop a new strategy game. Now, Respawn Entertainment is usually working on first-person shooter games, so them doing a strategy game for Star Wars is a bit of a sidestep. I mean, technically we don't even really know if it's an RTS, but I thought I'd mention it here because it's a pretty interesting development. But that's really all we know for now. Alright, there we go. That's a whole bunch of RTSs for you to keep an eye on over the next year. Let me know which one is your favorite. If you liked the video, press the like button, subscribe for more of these list videos, and check out the other lists on the channel. I've covered so many genres, you just go check them out. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.